Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. First of all, I'd like to say I'm sorry that I haven't uploaded since my channel trailer, I believe it was. No real excuses for it. I've been trying to get a lot of shit sorted out. Just haven't really done well at that, not gonna lie. But that's the reason I've been more or less away from it. I haven't had a lot of time to film much of anything. But I'm hoping to change that from, well, now, hopefully. So this video basically is going to be a walkthrough of my rig. So if you remember, well, on the channel trailer, from a certain point of view, you can see my machine in the background just slightly. So I'm not going to lie to you, I wasn't very happy with it. So I've pretty much revamped the entire thing pretty much revamped everything. So today I'm going to take you through a quick walkthrough of what I use to game on. That includes keyboard, you know my mouse, keyboard, screen, obviously all the internal CPU, motherboard, graphics card, all of that good stuff. And yeah, hope you guys like the video. If you do, please hit that like button and subscribe. So we'll start with the most obvious. My previous case was the Kagami K5, which was a fairly entry-level case. It was a cheap case that I bought so that I could spend more money on my graphics card, essentially. After roughly a year of holding on to that, I decided to pick up something a little bit more higher class, we'll say. And I also needed something that had better cable management because the cable management in my old machine was absolutely terrible. Which is where this guy comes in. This is the Corsair Carbide Spec 6, I believe, has full front RGB, tempered side glass panel, there we go, that was a struggle to get out. Good airflow as well, plenty of expansion slots at the back if your motherboard supports it, which mine sort of doesn't at the same time. We'll get into that a little shortly. But in the meantime, this is the case on sleep, and before I power on the machine, I'll show you the front and the side. So obviously, this is the side of the machine with that beautiful tempered glass panel. At the moment it's off, so obviously we've got no fancy flashing lights. However, the motherboard has still got power running through it, which is why you can still see the blue. My motherboard is the Aorus B360 Gaming Wi-Fi, I believe it was, which was also purchased. Most of these parts were purchased last year when I first built it, but there are a few new additions which I'll get to in a minute. But without further ado, let's power this bad boy up and I will show you how it's like. So as you can see, the front is full level RGB. You can set speed, tones, you can also make a solid color if you really wish. The controls are actually on the back of the machine, which is something I found interesting, but we'll move on from that. So that's the RGB aspect of the case, and if we move on to the side, you will see the full RGB goodness of the rest of my machine. So as you can see, I went all out with the whole RGB status thing. There's a stick in there that should be doing more, but I'll deal with that in a minute. I'm running 32 gigs of 2666 megahertz DDR4 Corsair Vengeance Pro RGB RAM. It started out as 16, but I upped it to 32 just for the sake of editing purposes and sort of that sort of stuff. One of the other main reasons I bought this case was just the pure aesthetics of it, and the room for more fans, I've come to find, is definitely helping with my cooling. So on the subject of fans, we've got this fella here, which is just a single, obviously, fan to push the air out. I've gone full Rotanium, because these are Rotanium triple ring fans, I believe. Obviously full RGB, as you can see. I went with that for my entire system because my cooling solution, which I'll get to in a minute, I'd prefer to have synchronization and consistency between my fans and the cooling aspects in general. But it was also easier to hook up all these fans to the actual box controller, which is concealed where all the cable management's at on the other side of the machine. So I initially started with the 3 Rotanium fans that were in my beginner video, and I added the one on the back, and of course the one just up there on the radiator, which I'll get to in a moment. So I didn't actually let the 3 Rotanium fans I previously owned go to waste. So I've mounted them, as you can see, on the front to pull as much air in as it can, so that we can keep the cooling factor to a cool temperature, just because I don't want any of my parts overheating and me having to spend excess amounts trying to sort that out. But I'm glad I was able to keep these fans, and I'm glad that this case actually has enough room to incorporate my old hardware along with my new hardware. So on the aspect of cooling, as you can see, I've got the Corsair H100i RGB Platinum AIO cooler, I believe. Previous to this, I was just running a standard CPU cooler at the time, which was alright, but I knew I could do better, so I decided to shell out the extra money to go AIO, which was a good decision in my opinion. It runs great, it keeps the CPU at a nice cool temp, and it just adds to the overall aesthetic of the design that I went for in this machine. And then, of course, we have the graphics card. Now, the little thing above the graphics card is just your standard, Wi-Fi card. I shelled out for one with 5G so that I could actually get the decent speeds. Fun fact, I actually stuffed it the first time I bought it, and I only had one that was on the 2.4 gigahertz network and had to run out and hot swap it with the 5G one, which was still worth it in the end because I can get better speeds out of this chip. And of course, the graphics card. So, the graphics card at the minute is a Gigabyte RTX 2060. So when I bought this, it was about probably $760. It's got 6 gigs of GDDR5, I believe. So this can run most games fairly well. Fortnite, it can fly up to probably 200 frames, I believe I've gotten solidly. I cap it at 120 just for the sake of no fluctuation between frames, and 120 is more than enough. So, and this plays most of my games at about 100 plus frames, which I can't complain about, and I'm quite happy with it. So as for a panel, I'm running the HP X27 monitor, which I also bought last year. It's got 144 Hz refresh rate, AMD FreeSync, of course. It's HDR, and I'm hoping this video actually does the HDR justice. It's a great panel, never let me down. It's obviously 27 inches, which is where it gets it in the name. Great one, I would recommend. It's still a bit expensive at the moment, but I'd probably still buy one because it's an absolutely ripper of a monitor. And for what I've been using it for, it's just been pristine. And last but certainly not least, we have my keyboard. Now, I've gone through a few of these. I started with the Corsair K55, which was the smaller form factor one without the numpad, and for work reasons as well as just key binding reasons, I needed a number pad. So I then went with the Corsair K65, which was pretty much the same variant of my previous one, just with the numpad. And then after a while, I wanted a better, clickier sound. So I went out, did some research, and bang for buck, this was the best option. So this is the Thermaltake Neptune Pro, which is rocking Cherry MX Blue switches, which has that typewriter type of sound to it, which is something that I really like in my keyboards. The palm rest is nice and comfy as well, and with the separate volume controls, it makes life a little bit easier too. So there you guys have it. That's a rundown of my personal rig, and I'm extremely proud of it, just purely because of the fact that I built it. Sure, some people may decide to go pre-built. Me personally, I prefer to go from the ground up and build it myself because it's just a lot of fun to do. But yeah, that was my rig. I hope you enjoyed this video, so like, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next one.